Mark lived in a busy city where everything seemed to move very fast. He worked as a software engineer in a big company. Every day, he spent many hours in front of a computer, solving problems and creating new programs. His job was important, and he liked it, but it kept him very busy. When Mark came home, he was often tired and had little energy left for other things. Mark's apartment was small but comfortable. It had a kitchen, a living room, a bedroom, and a bathroom. Even though it was not very big, he had to keep it clean and organized. But with his long working hours, it was difficult to find time to do house chores. Sometimes the dishes piled up in the sink and the floor got dusty. Mark felt frustrated because he wanted his home to be neat, but he had no time to do it all. One evening, while scrolling on his phone, Mark saw an advertisement for a new service. The company offered robot maids. These were machines designed to help people with housework. The robots could clean the floor, wash dishes, cook simple meals, and even organize things. The ad showed pictures of shiny robots moving quickly and doing many tasks at once. The idea sounded amazing to Mark. He thought, if I get one of these robot maids, my life would become much easier. Mark had heard about robots before, but this was the first time he saw such advanced models. They were not just machines, they looked friendly and smart. The company promised that their robots could learn and adapt to the needs of the owner. They could understand instructions and even remember favorite recipes or cleaning styles. Mark was excited. He imagined coming home after a hard day and seeing his house perfectly clean, meals ready on the table, and no stress at all. The next day, Mark visited the company's website. He read all the details carefully. The robots were expensive, but the price seemed fair for the help they could provide. There were options to choose from, like different colors and special features. Mark picked a model that seemed perfect for his apartment. He placed the order online and received a message confirming the delivery date. It was only a few days away. During those days, Mark thought a lot about the new robot maid. He told his friends about it, and they were curious too. Some joked that maybe the robot would take over his job one day. Mark laughed, but was mostly focused on how much his life would change. He made a list of things he wanted the robot to do. Clean the floor every evening, wash dishes after meals, and help with cooking breakfast. On the day of delivery, Mark waited at home, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He wondered how the robot would look and behave. Would it be like the ones in the pictures? Would it understand his instructions easily? As the clock passed, he kept checking the door, ready to welcome his new helper. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Mark opened it quickly, expecting to see a shiny machine with blinking lights and moving parts. But what he saw surprised him completely. Instead of a robot, there was a young girl standing outside. She looked very different from anyone Mark had ever met. Her skin had a faint glow, and her eyes were big and bright with colors that seemed to change when she moved. Mark blinked, unsure if he was dreaming or if this was some kind of joke. The girl smiled gently and said, "Hello, Mark. I am Nova. I am here to assist you as your maid." Her voice was soft and calm, but also had a strange musical tone. Mark stood frozen for a moment. He thought maybe the company had sent the wrong delivery. "I ordered a robot," he said slowly. "Are you sure you are the right person?" Nova nodded. "Yes. I am the helper you requested. I am programmed to take care of your home and assist you with daily tasks." Mark was puzzled, but also curious. He decided to invite Nova inside. As she entered the apartment, Mark noticed she moved gracefully and seemed to understand everything perfectly. She looked around the room and smiled, saying she would start with cleaning. At first, Mark watched quietly. He wanted to see if Nova could really do the chores. She began by tidying up the living room, picking up things from the floor, dusting the shelves, and organizing books. Mark was impressed by how fast and carefully she worked. After finishing the living room, Nova moved to the kitchen. She washed the dishes and wiped the counters. Then, to Mark's surprise, she prepared a simple meal for him, something he liked but rarely had time to cook. Mark tasted the food and found it delicious. The whole evening felt different from what Mark had expected. He was not just watching a machine at work. It was like having a thoughtful companion helping him. He asked Nova questions, and she answered politely and with knowledge. Mark started to wonder about her origin and how she could do all these things so well. As the night came, Mark felt tired but happy. His home was cleaner than it had been in a long time. He thanked Nova and told her to rest, although he wasn't sure if she needed rest like humans do. Nova smiled and said she was always ready to help. Before going to bed, Mark sat by the window and thought about the day. He never imagined that hiring a robot maid would bring such an unusual experience. The girl at his door was unlike anything he expected. His curiosity grew stronger, and he felt that his life was about to change in ways he could not yet understand. The next morning, Mark woke up feeling a little strange. He thought about the girl who had come to his door instead of a robot. Her name was Nova, and she had acted so perfectly, almost like a machine, but she was clearly not one. Mark, still, wasn't sure if what he had seen was real or if he had imagined it. He got up and looked around his apartment. Everything was neat and clean, just as Nova had promised the day before. As Mark ate breakfast, he thought about what to do next. Should he call the company to ask why they sent a girl instead of a robot? Or should he ask Nova more questions? His curiosity grew stronger with every minute. Finally, he decided to talk to Nova directly. After all, she was now living in his home, and he wanted to understand who she really was. Mark found Nova sitting calmly in the living room. She was reading a book, but it wasn't a usual book. The pages glowed softly, and the words seemed to move as if they were alive. Mark felt even more surprised. He had never seen anything like it before. "Nova," Mark said carefully, "can I ask you something? Are you really a robot maid, or are you something else?" Nova looked up from the book and smiled kindly. "I understand your question, Mark. I am not a robot like the ones you expect. I am here to help you, but I come from far away." Mark's eyes widened. "Far away? What do you mean? Where are you from?" Nova paused for a moment, then answered, "I come from a place very different from here. My world is among the stars. I was sent to learn about your life on Earth." Mark couldn't believe what he was hearing. He looked at Nova closely, searching for any sign that she was joking, but her eyes were calm and serious. She spoke with honesty and respect. "You mean you are an alien?" Mark asked slowly. "Yes," Nova said softly. "I am from another planet. My people wanted to understand humans better. I was chosen to live here and learn." Mark felt a mix of surprise, fear, and curiosity. He had always thought about the possibility of aliens, but he never expected one to appear at his door. He asked many questions, wanting to know everything about her world and why she had come. Nova explained that her planet was very different from Earth. They had technology much more advanced than humans, but they lacked some things that made life meaningful, like feelings, friendship, and simple joys. Nova was sent to experience these things by living among humans. Mark listened carefully. He was amazed by her story, but also felt the weight of responsibility. If Nova was real and came from another world, how could he protect her? What if others found out and didn't understand? Over the next few days, Mark and Nova spent a lot of time together. She helped around the house, learning quickly how to do things better. But she also asked many questions about human life, feelings, and culture. She wanted to understand why people acted the way they did. Mark found himself sharing stories about his childhood, his work, and his dreams. Nova listened with interest and sometimes gave thoughtful answers. Their conversations became a way for Mark to see his own world differently. One evening, Nova asked Mark about his family. Mark told her about his parents who lived far away and how he missed them. Nova nodded, saying she understood the feeling of being far from home. Sometimes Nova would look out of the window late at night, staring at the stars with a quiet expression. Mark noticed this and asked her why she did that. Nova said, "I am thinking about my home. The stars remind me of where I came from. Even though I am here, part of me belongs to that place." Mark felt a strange connection with Nova. She was different, but she also felt lonely sometimes, just like him. He realized that despite their differences, they both needed friendship and understanding. One afternoon, while Nova was cleaning the living room, Mark's phone rang. It was the company he had ordered the robot Maid from. They wanted to confirm the delivery and asked if everything was okay. Mark hesitated. How could he explain the truth? He didn't want the company to send someone else or to take Nova away. So, he said that the delivery was fine and thanked them. After the call, Mark looked at Nova and smiled. "I think I'll keep you as my helper for now," he said. Nova returned his smile. "I am glad to be here." As days turned into weeks, Mark and Nova settled into a routine. She helped with house chores and kept learning about human life. Mark began to teach her things like cooking favorite dishes and how to use simple gadgets in the apartment. Nova showed incredible skills. She could fix small problems quickly and remembered details that Mark sometimes forgot. She was not just a helper, but also a friend who cared. One day, Mark took Nova to a nearby park. It was a sunny afternoon and children were playing. Nova watched them carefully and asked many questions about their games and laughter. Mark explained how people find joy in simple moments like playing, talking with friends, or enjoying nature. Nova listened with wide eyes and said, "This is very different from my world. It feels warm and alive." Mark smiled. He realized how lucky he was to have Nova in his life. She had brought new meaning and wonder to his everyday routine, but still, Mark wondered how long Nova would stay. He was afraid that one day she might have to leave or that someone would discover her secret. He kept these thoughts to himself, hoping for more time to learn and grow with her. One night, as they sat together watching the city lights, Nova said, softly, "Thank you, Mark. You have taught me much about being human." Mark looked at her and replied, "And you have taught me to believe in the impossible." Both of them knew their story was unusual, but it was theirs. A story of friendship, trust, and discovery between a man and an alien girl who knocked on his door instead of a robot maid. Days passed, and Mark's life slowly changed. Having Nova around made everything feel new and exciting. She was not like any person he had met before. Though she helped with housework just like a robot might, she was also curious, thoughtful, and full of questions. Mark enjoyed their conversations, and he found himself looking forward to each day. Nova was very intelligent. She could quickly learn how to operate all the devices in Mark's apartment. She cleaned with great care and prepared meals that tasted good. But what surprised Mark most was how much Nova wanted to understand human emotions. She asked about feelings like happiness, sadness, anger, and love. Mark explained as best as he could, using stories from his own life. One afternoon, Mark came home after a long day at work. He felt tired and a bit stressed. Usually, he would just sit quietly, but this time Nova noticed something was different. She gently asked, "Are you okay, Mark?" Mark sighed and nodded. "Just a tough day. Sometimes work is hard and I feel alone." Nova looked at him with her bright eyes and said softly, "I do not fully understand loneliness, but I think it means missing someone or feeling empty inside." Mark smiled at her kindness. He appreciated how she tried to understand him, even though her world was so different. Yes, that's right. Sometimes, even when people are busy, they feel lonely. Nova paused and then asked, "Do you have friends to talk to?" Mark thought for a moment. "I have friends, but I don't see them often. I spend most of my time working or at home." Nova nodded slowly. "I believe friendship is important. It helps us feel connected." Mark agreed. He realized that having Nova was like having a friend he could always count on. Unlike other people, Nova never judged him or hurried him. She listened carefully and made him feel understood. Over time, Nova shared more about her own feelings. She said that on her planet, beings like her didn't have emotions the way humans did. Their lives were very logical and planned, but sometimes they felt something was missing. Nova's mission on Earth was to learn about those feelings and bring that knowledge back to her people. Mark found this fascinating. He never thought about emotions as something to be learned like a skill. He told Nova that feelings could be confusing but also beautiful because they make life richer. One day, while cleaning the bookshelf, Nova found a photo of Mark with his family. She asked about the people in the picture. Mark told her stories about his childhood, his parents, and the times they spent together. Nova listened with great interest and said, "Family is a strong bond. It teaches love and support." Mark smiled and said, "Yes, family means a lot to me. Even though I don't see them often, they are always in my heart." Nova's curiosity about human life didn't stop at feelings. She wanted to learn about everyday habits, traditions, and even entertainment. Mark showed her movies and music he liked. Nova enjoyed the colorful images and the sounds, trying to understand what made them special. One evening, Nova asked Mark to teach her how to dance. Mark laughed but agreed. They moved around the living room awkwardly at first, but soon they were having fun. Nova's movements were graceful yet different from any human dance. Mark realized that despite her alien origin, she was learning to enjoy simple pleasures just like him. As their friendship grew, Mark began to notice subtle things about Nova. Sometimes, she would stare quietly at the sky, as if remembering her distant home. Other times, she would touch objects gently, trying to understand their meaning. Mark understood that Nova was discovering the world with fresh eyes, experiencing things he had taken for granted. One rainy afternoon, Mark caught a cold. He felt weak and stayed in bed all day. Nova took care of him, making warm tea and sitting by his side. She read stories aloud and sang soft songs that made Mark feel better. He realized how much he depended on her kindness and presence. Mark started to think about the future. He wondered if Nova would stay with him forever, or if her mission on Earth had an end. The idea of losing her made him sad. He wished he could keep this friendship safe from the outside world. Mark also worried about what others would think if they knew about Nova. She was different, and people might not understand. He decided to keep her secret, protecting her as best as he could. One evening after dinner, Mark and Nova sat together on the balcony. The city lights shone below and the stars twinkled above. Nova looked at Mark and said quietly, "Thank you for accepting me, Mark. You have shown me what it means to be human." Mark smiled warmly. "And you have shown me how to see the world with new eyes. I'm glad you are here." Their bond was growing stronger, a friendship that crossed the boundaries of worlds. They shared stories, dreams, and simple moments that made life meaningful. But despite the happiness, Mark sensed there was more to Nova's story. She had not told him everything yet. He wondered what secrets she kept and what challenges she might face living on Earth. Mark promised himself to stay by her side, no matter what came next. Together, they were ready to face the unknown. One quiet evening, as the city lights dimmed and the stars began to shine brightly, Nova decided it was time to share more of her story with Mark. They sat together in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting gentle shadows on the walls. Mark noticed that Nova seemed thoughtful and calm, as if she had something important to tell him. Nova began by explaining that her mission on Earth was part of a larger plan. Her people wanted to learn about humans to better understand emotions, kindness, and the bonds that connect people. She said that back on her planet, life was very different. Everything was controlled by logic and rules. There was little room for feelings or surprises. Her people lived in order, but lacked the warmth that made life special. She told Mark that she was chosen to come to Earth because she was curious and open-minded. Unlike others from her world, she had a desire to experience new things, to see the beauty in small moments, and to understand the complexity of human hearts. This mission was not just about collecting information, but about growing and learning in a deeper way. Mark listened carefully. He was fascinated, but also a little worried. "What will happen when your mission is over?" he asked. Nova looked down, her eyes reflecting the soft light. "I do not know," she said honestly. "My people expect me to return with what I have learned, but my heart feels torn. I have grown attached to this world and to you." Mark felt a lump in his throat. He understood the weight of her words. The idea that she might have to leave made him sad. He wanted to protect her and keep her safe, but he also knew she had responsibilities beyond his home. Nova continued, explaining that while she appeared human, she had abilities that made her different. She could learn faster than anyone, heal small injuries quickly, and understand complex information in seconds. These abilities helped her blend in, but they also made her stand out in ways Mark could not fully understand. One day, Nova showed Mark a device from her world. It was small, glowing softly with blue light. She explained that it helped her communicate with her people and receive instructions. Sometimes, she received messages that reminded her of the importance of her mission. Mark asked if she ever felt afraid or lonely. Nova admitted that she did. Being so far from home, living among strangers was not always easy. Sometimes she missed the familiar places and faces of her planet, but knowing that she had a friend like Mark gave her strength. Mark shared his own fears too. He worried that others might discover Nova's secret and react with fear or hostility. He did not want her to be taken away or harmed. They talked about the challenges of keeping her true identity safe in a world that might not understand. Together, they made a promise. Mark would protect Nova and help her live peacefully on Earth. Nova would continue learning and sharing what she could. Their friendship was a bond of trust, respect, and care. One afternoon, Nova asked Mark to take her outside to see the city. She wanted to experience the life beyond his apartment. Mark agreed, happy to show her the world he loved. They walked through busy streets, watched people at parks, and listened to street musicians playing cheerful tunes. Nova's eyes sparkled with wonder. She was fascinated by the colors, sounds, and emotions around her. Mark explained things patiently, answering her many questions. At one point, they stopped at a small cafe. Mark bought 2 cups of tea, and they sat together watching the people pass by. Nova said, "This is what I came here to learn. The simple joys that make life beautiful." Mark smiled, feeling grateful. He realized how much Nova's presence had changed his life. She reminded him to appreciate small moments and to stay curious about the world. That night, back at home, Nova looked at the stars again. She whispered softly, "I am lucky to have found a friend like you, Mark. You have shown me what it means to care and to belong." Mark reached out and gently held her hand. "And you've shown me that sometimes the most unexpected guests can change our lives forever." They sat together in silence, feeling a connection that went beyond words. 2 beings from different worlds, sharing a friendship that was rare and precious. But deep inside, both of them knew there were still questions left unanswered. Nova's mission might come to an end, and the future was uncertain. Yet, in that moment, all that mattered was the trust they had built. Mark promised himself to stand by Nova no matter what happened. Their story was just beginning, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Time passed, and the bond between Mark and Nova grew stronger every day. Their friendship was unusual, yet it felt natural and comforting. Nova was no longer just the mysterious visitor who came instead of a robot maid. She had become a part of Mark's life, teaching him about a universe far beyond what he had ever imagined. Mark and Nova shared many moments together, laughing, learning, and discovering the beauty of life. They talked about dreams, hopes, and fears. Nova learned more about human kindness, and Mark learned to look at the world with wonder and curiosity, much like Nova did when she first arrived. One day, Nova surprised Mark by asking if she could meet some of his friends. She wanted to see how humans connected with each other, how friendships worked in everyday life. Mark was hesitant but agreed. He invited a few close friends over for dinner, and Nova prepared a delicious meal with her growing cooking skills. At first, Mark's friends were unsure about Nova. She looked different, and they noticed her unusual way of speaking and moving. But as they spent time together, they began to see Nova's kindness and intelligence. Her gentle nature won their hearts, and soon she was sharing stories and laughing with everyone. The evening was filled with warmth and joy. Nova asked many questions about human traditions, and Mark's friends were happy to explain and include her. The night showed Mark that even though Nova was different, friendship and kindness could bridge any gap. But Mark and Nova also faced challenges. Sometimes people asked questions that made Nova nervous, and she worried about revealing too much. Mark promised to protect her and to keep her secret safe. They knew that not everyone would understand or accept Nova's true identity. One afternoon, Nova received a message through her special device. It was from her people, reminding her that her mission on Earth was coming to an end. She needed to return home soon, to share what she had learned and to help her people grow. Hearing this, Mark felt a deep sadness. The thought of losing Nova was hard to imagine. They had become close, like family, and the idea of separation was painful. Nova, too, felt torn. She wanted to stay, but also knew she had responsibilities waiting for her. They spent the following days preparing for this change. Mark helped Nova gather memories, photos, favorite books, and little things that reminded her of Earth. Nova taught Mark about her world, sharing stories and knowledge he had never heard before. On the last night before Nova's departure, they sat together under the stars. The city was quiet, and the air was cool. Nova held Mark's hand gently and said, "Thank you for everything. You have given me friendship, kindness, and a home away from home." Mark smiled through tears. "You will always be a part of my life, Nova, no matter where you go." Nova nodded and whispered, "And you have taught me that love and friendship can cross any distance." When the morning came, Nova prepared to leave. She wore a simple dress, and her eyes shone with a mixture of hope and sadness. Mark walked her to the door and hugged her tightly. As Nova stepped outside, a soft light surrounded her. Mark watched in awe as she began to change. Her glowing skin shimmered, and her eyes sparkled like stars. Slowly, Nova transformed into a beam of light and rose into the sky, disappearing among the stars she once called home. Mark stood there, feeling both loss and gratitude. He knew their story was extraordinary, a true story of friendship that crossed worlds. Nova had come as a stranger, but she left as a forever friend. Days turned into weeks, and life returned to its usual pace. But Mark felt different. He had learned to appreciate the small joys of life and the beauty of connection. Nova's visit had changed him in ways he never expected. Sometimes, when Mark looked up at the night sky, he felt a gentle presence watching over him. He smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, Nova was thinking of him too. Mark kept living with hope and an open heart, ready for whatever adventures life might bring. He knew that sometimes the most unexpected guests could change our lives forever, and that friendship in any form was a gift to cherish.